You see, emotionally mature men don't fall for loudness. They fall for truth, spoken without trembling, without rehearsed softness, without the trembling need to be accepted. A woman who owns her voice as if it were an ancestral instrument, as if the syllables dripping from her tongue were crafted in some primordial temple, long before language itself was born. That woman does not whisper to gain affection. She speaks because the silence no longer serves. Carl Jung once noted in one of his lesser-cited letters, hidden in a bundle of private correspondences long buried in the Zurich archives, that the anima activated in a man is not seduced by beauty, but by the symbolic precision of a woman's inner conviction. And that conviction, unshaken and unapologetic, is precisely what rattles something primal in the emotionally evolved man. This is not about being opinionated. It is about being embodied. She does not speak to perform. She speaks from the pelvis, from the dream, from the breath between heartbeats. Her words come wrapped in the scent of self-possession, and that scent is what lingers, haunting men who once believed they had known desire. The mature masculine does not crave to dominate this kind of woman. He is summoned by her, not through flirtation, but through frequency. Her tone speaks in hieroglyphs of soul. There's no performance to decode, no coquettishness to play with. Only a kind of dangerous clarity, a kind of spoken truth that undoes him, because he too has lived long enough to know how rare it is. You see, men who have traversed their own darkness, who have been cracked open by life, betrayed by false gods, and forced to surrender the ego's tight grip, recognize something sacred in the voice of a woman who has done the same. He hears not only her present-day syllables, he hears lifetimes. He hears the myth of the goddess re-emerging in modern form. He hears what cannot be faked, a soul that has nothing left to prove. And while the world will call her intimidating, cold, or even too much, the emotionally mature man calls her home. Not because she makes him comfortable, but because she awakens something in him that has been long dormant. Reverence. There is an ancient story, older than even the Sumerian tablets, passed through the lungs of desert priestesses and stone-carving mothers. The story tells of a woman whose mouth spoke the seasons into bloom. Her voice caused warriors to lay down arms, not because it was sweet, but because it was sovereign. Not a sound for approval, but a summoning. That story is not a myth. It is a memory buried in his bones. And when a man of depth meets a woman who walks with that frequency, he does not chase her. He follows her across lifetimes. But what allows such a voice to be born? It is not learned in books, nor taught in courses. It is forged in solitude, in rage, in nights where the moon felt like her only witness. It is sculpted in moments where she said what needed to be said and paid the price. It is molded in silence, those sacred silences where she refused to speak just to make others comfortable. And so her voice, when finally released, carries thunder. Not the thunder of loudness, but the thunder of undeniable presence. You must understand, the emotionally immature man wants charm, but the emotionally mature man seeks transmission. A woman who carries herself like a prayer that never ends, who speaks as if her every word holds energetic consequence. He cannot resist this, not because it entertains him, but because it reminds him of himself, the self he almost forgot. The self that remembers she is not a girl in need of permission, but a woman reclaiming a power denied to her ancestors. So when you ask, what habits do these men find irresistible? Start here. Speak from your darkness. Speak from your joy. Speak from the bone truth, even when it shakes the walls of the room. Let your yes be sacred and your no be ceremonial. Let your pauses carry as much meaning as your words. Do not shrink your voice to fit their expectations. Stretch it like sacred incense over centuries of silencing, and let the men who are truly worthy inhale. Do not flatter. Do not entertain. Speak as if you are casting spells with syllables, as if your tongue were dipped in ritual, because it is. And the man who is whole enough to meet you there will not ask you to soften. He will ask you to go deeper. The woman who speaks from the soul is not performative. She does not shout. She does not persuade. She simply allows the divine rhythm within her to take the form of language. And when she does, the room bends around her, because reality itself recognizes its mother. There is an intimacy deeper than skin, a communication that happens soul to soul, wordless and irreversible. But it is only activated when a woman chooses to inhabit her voice, no longer echoing society's rules, but vibrating with the energy of the truth buried in her marrow. To the emotionally mature man, this is not only attractive, it is disarming, because it reveals how much of himself he's ignored, because it whispers of a home he didn't know he missed, and because once he hears it, he knows no other song will ever sound quite the same again. And before I take you to the second element of this secret ritual, one that lives not in the voice, but in the eyes, let me leave you with this truth. When you stop speaking to be loved, and begin speaking because love itself lives in your lungs, the kind of man you magnetize is no longer the one who wants to possess you. It is the one who is ready to witness you. There is something rare, almost mythological, about a woman who does not flinch in stillness. Her eyes do not chase approval. They rest, they hold, they listen. Not to the noise outside, but to the murmurs of something older than language, intuition, the first mother tongue. And when a man meets that gaze, one that does not scatter in need or inflate in performance, he is confronted with a mirror too honest to look away from. You see, emotionally mature men do not fall in love with chaos masquerading as passion. They are not lured by drama or by the flickering hunger of someone trying to be enough. They are pulled into orbit by the gravity of inner stillness, the quiet, unshakable sanctuary that lives behind a woman's eyes when she has stopped asking for anything from the outside world. Stillness is not absence, it is density, emotional density, the kind of presence forged in the aftermath of storms, when a woman has cried herself clean, screamed herself empty, and sat with her own ghosts until they became guardians. It is that kind of woman who no longer fears her silence, who becomes a sanctuary for the emotionally awakened man. There is a forgotten Jungian passage, handwritten on the margins of a manuscript that never reached public print, where he describes a feminine archetype he called the cave bearer. She was not the temptress, not the mother, not the maiden. She was the one who held stillness like a flame in winter, the one whose gaze invited not pleasure, but remembrance. It was through her that men remembered the soul. Stillness disorients the immature man. He mistakes it for coldness, or detachment, or worst of all, lack of interest. But the mature man knows stillness is a test. It is the sacred pause between what you want and what you are. It is where every projection dies. And only a man who has met his own shadows can sit inside that silence and not flee. Behind the stillness in her gaze is an ancient spell. It is not cast, it is remembered. She has remembered how to look without seducing, how to observe without reacting, how to hold space without collapsing into it. And when she looks at him, not with hunger, not with need, but with clarity, his body recognizes the kind of attention it has been starved of since boyhood, because her stillness doesn't just offer rest, it offers reconstruction. A man unraveling in her presence does not fall apart. He reassembles. He meets parts of himself in her gaze that no one else dared to reflect. He sees not who he's pretended to be, but who he was before the world taught him to armor up. What makes this stillness irresistible? It is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to leak it. The emotionally mature woman has made peace with her chaos. She has transmuted it into art, into ritual, into embodied calm. She does not dump her storms onto others. She channels them inward, lets them shape her bones, and emerges not as a hurricane, but as a mountain. Stillness is a language the body understands before the mind does. And when she offers it, without agenda, without urgency, it becomes a healing field. Not because she tries to fix anyone, but because her refusal to be moved by superficiality invites others to descend deeper into themselves. The emotionally evolved man cannot resist this because he knows how rare it is. In a world obsessed with reaction, with stimulation, with endless emotional noise, a woman who can hold eye contact without fear, without flirtation, without demand, is like a cathedral in the middle of a burning city. She is refuge. Stillness is also a boundary. It tells him, I will not perform for you. I will not explain my worth. I will not bend for validation. I am, and if you cannot meet me in this space of being, then I will remain alone rather than reduce myself to be seen. This terrifies the boy inside every man who has learned to equate attention with worth, but it awakens the king, the one who has already burned the costume of ego and is now seeking the presence of someone who has done the same. Her stillness is a rite of passage. Not every man will pass, but the ones who do will never forget the woman who held silence with such sacred defiance that the noise inside them finally went quiet. And you, woman of depth, if you're listening, know this. Stillness is not about meditation cushions and soft music. It is about reclaiming the parts of you that no longer panic in absence. It is the muscle you build every time you resist the urge to explain yourself. It is the soul's way of saying, I will not dilute just to be digested more easily. You become still not to be mysterious, but to remember yourself, to gather your pieces, to hold your own gaze in the mirror long enough that your reflection becomes an altar. And the man who sees that stillness will not run from it. He will bow to it, because in that moment he realizes, this is not a woman who wants to be saved. This is a woman who has already descended into herself and emerged whole. And it is that wholeness, not her appearance, not her performance, that seduces him at the deepest level, because it reminds him of what he too is capable of becoming. So, when you walk into the room and say nothing, when you do not smile to make them comfortable, when you do not offer your light to be accepted, watch what happens. Watch how the men who are not yet whole become unsettled, and how the one who is steps closer, not because you asked, but because your stillness became an invitation to return to his own. Before we move into the third sacred habit, the one hidden not in silence but in energy, let this settle into your bones. You were not made to chase. You were made to call. And you do that not by seeking, but by remembering who you are, where you come from, and what stillness can hold when it is no longer afraid of being misunderstood. There is a kind of desire that has nothing to do with the body and everything to do with density. The kind of erotic pull that comes not from touch, not from words, not even from beauty, but from something far more ancient, wholeness. When a woman is whole unto herself, when she no longer fractures her spirit into pieces for anyone's comfort, something happens in the energetic field around her. It thickens, it deepens, it begins to pulse with a frequency that emotionally mature men cannot explain, but they feel it in their chest, in their gut, in their groin. The gravitational force of a woman who does not need anything becomes unbearable, and yet they crave it. This is not the seduction of surfaces. This is the seduction of solidity. A woman who is no longer seeking herself through someone else becomes magnetic, because the emotionally evolved man recognizes in her a truth he has been trying to remember his entire life. She does not complete him. She reminds him of the part of himself that stopped waiting, that stopped begging, that stopped performing. Jung once suggested that wholeness is achieved when the ego becomes transparent enough to allow the self to emerge. For women, this often means shedding generations of conditioning to please, to be wanted, to be nice, to be small. For men, it means facing the illusion that power lies in dominance. When both have faced this, something erotic and spiritual is born between them. Not chemistry, not infatuation, but recognition. And it is this recognition that becomes irresistible. The emotionally mature man is drawn to the woman who no longer leaks energy through self-betrayal. She has closed the loop. She is no longer available to roles, masks, or games. She radiates from the inside out, and her erotic energy is no longer confined to her skin. It moves through her presence, her tone, her choices. It is not about what she gives, but about what she withholds, not out of manipulation, but out of sacred discernment. She chooses herself in every moment, and in doing so, becomes an initiation for the man who has long sought something real. Not easy, not soft, not convenient. Real. Realness is erotic because it is rare. Wholeness, you see, is a portal, and not every man is ready to walk through it. But those who are, those who have sat in the cave of their own shame, who have made peace with the wolves inside their chest, those men can feel her before she speaks. She enters the room and their body responds, not with hunger, but with remembrance, not with fantasy, but with awe. This is the woman who no longer performs her femininity for approval. She embodies it. She wears her complexity like a sacred veil. She doesn't simplify herself to be digestible. She expands. She deepens. She becomes more and more of what she truly is. And that intensity becomes a fire only the brave dare enter. And yet, the emotionally mature man wants that fire because he's tired of playing small. He's tired of being adored for the mask. He's tired of lying to himself. In her presence, he sees a possibility that maybe, just maybe, he too could stop pretending. That maybe love isn't about merging, but about standing fully in one's own being and letting the connection arise from there. Her erotic gravity doesn't beg to be noticed. It pulls, not with force, but with the irresistible allure of someone who has nothing to prove. When a woman is whole, she becomes unbothered. She does not chase closure. She does not beg to be chosen. She does not dilute her mystery to be understood. She lives in rhythm with something deeper than logic, a feminine current that whispers not, "Love me," but "Witness me if you dare." And in that witnessing, the man is changed. He sees that she is not waiting for him to rescue her from solitude. She has already made love to her own silence. She has already danced with her rage. She has already mothered her own wounds and sung lullabies to the parts of herself that once begged to be seen. She is not lonely. She is inhabited. And the man who meets her there finds not a partner to fix, but a force to revere. There is nothing more erotic than a woman who does not flinch at her own shadow. Nothing more sacred than a woman who lets herself be whole in front of a man without asking him to carry her weight. Nothing more unforgettable than the feminine in full bloom, unapologetically rooted in her own soil. Wholeness is the ultimate aphrodisiac because it cannot be faked. It cannot be performed. It cannot be bought or borrowed. It is earned through inner war, sacred grief, and the willingness to be misunderstood by a world that profits from your self-doubt. To be whole is to become your own lover, your own mother, your own altar. And when you do, you become a mystery he cannot solve. He doesn't want to fix you. He wants to feel you. Not just your softness, but your sharpness. Not just your light, but your shadows. Because when you are whole, you give him permission to become whole too. And isn't that what we're truly longing for? Not to be loved for our fragments, but to be met in our totality. Before we descend into the fourth sacred current, the one buried deep in the part of you most women fear touching, remember this: your erotic power is not in your performance. It is in your presence. The way you walk into a room with your wholeness intact. The way you no longer need to explain why you are too much. The way your being says, without words, "I am not here to be consumed. I am here to be witnessed." The man who is ready will feel it, and he won't run. He'll kneel. Every emotionally mature man has met her, though he may not yet have known what to call her. The woman who does not hide her shadow. The woman who has stared into the abyss of her own being and come back not with shame, but with stories, symbols, rituals. And in doing so, she has become unforgettable because she does not fear the darkness inside her. She courts it. She draws it out like a serpent from under the bed. She sits with it like a mother, not judging, not taming, but listening. And that presence, that ability to sit calmly with what others flee from, is what makes her magnetic to the emotionally evolved masculine. Carl Jung insisted that wholeness is not perfection, but the integration of the shadow, the willingness to acknowledge the violent, the wild, the sexual, the cruel, the wounded, and make peace with it instead of exiling it. And there is nothing more disarming, nothing more erotic than a woman who has stopped exiling herself. You see, the emotionally mature man has already met his own shadow. He knows its scent, jealousy, fear, unworthiness, hunger for control, hunger for approval. He knows what it feels like to live in a body trained to suppress its pain, to armor its softness. So when he meets a woman who isn't afraid of her shadow, he knows he has found an equal, not a savior, not a project, but a partner in the sacred art of self-remembrance. She does not hide her anger behind politeness. She does not bury her grief beneath a curated smile. She does not sanitize her history to seem desirable. She shows up as all of it, not to overwhelm, not to shock, but to invite. To invite him to bring his shadow too, to the table, to the bedroom, to the altar. And there, in the temple of two people who no longer run from their darkness, something holy is born. Not romance, not perfection, but truth. You see, when a woman touches her own shadow, when she learns to hold it with tenderness, to stop apologizing for its voice, she becomes an oracle. She knows things without knowing how she knows them. She reads men like ancient scripts, not because she is invasive, but because she has done the work of reading herself. And that terrifies the emotionally immature man, because he cannot hide, he cannot posture. She sees right through the costume. But to the man who is ready, this is liberation. Finally, he can breathe. He no longer has to pretend. He no longer has to perform desire, because she doesn't want the mask. She wants him, the truth, the animal, the fear, the hesitation, the longing. And this is where the sacred polarity is born. Because when a woman brings her darkness into the light without fear, she becomes the alchemical priestess. She holds space for the full spectrum, pleasure and pain, death and rebirth, silence and song. And when a man meets her there, he remembers a love older than time, the kind that does not ask him to be anything other than whole. Her shadow is not chaotic. It is precise. It tells the truth. It speaks the words no one dares speak aloud. It names the unnameable, and it refuses to be caged. This woman, she does not flinch at your darkness because she has met her own and made it holy. She does not need to be nice. She is real. She is safe, not because she is predictable, but because she is honest. And emotional maturity, at its core, is the capacity to hold truth without collapsing. So when you, the woman listening, stop apologizing for your rage, your appetite, your sorrow, your mess, when you stop performing palatable femininity and instead embody the sacred totality of your being, you become medicine, not the kind that tastes sweet, but the kind that heals at the root. And yes, some men will recoil because they only know how to love fragments, but others will come undone because you remind them that wholeness is not sterile. It is wild, it is sacred, it is intimate. In tantric wisdom, not the pop culture version, but the root teachings buried in Himalayan monasteries and feminine bloodlines. The feminine is revered not just for her light, but for her capacity to dance with the void. She is not only the flower, she is also the soil, the decay, the silence before sound. And when you embody that, you awaken the same in him. You give him permission to unravel, to weep, to scream, to desire without shame. And that is what he cannot resist, because it is so rare, because it is so true. Before we descend into the final ritual, the invisible current of presence that cannot be taught, only remembered, I leave you with this. Do not fear your shadow. It is the part of you that holds the keys to your most erotic, most intuitive, most transformative power. The part of you that doesn't care to be liked, but longs to be known. And when you bring it to light, without apology, without shame, you don't just attract love. You become love in its fiercest, rawest, most revolutionary form. The kind that doesn't fit in boxes. The kind that doesn't need labels. The kind that walks into a man's life and rearranges his soul, not through force, but through truth. And the ones who are ready will stay. There are no candles burning, no sacred chants echoing through the walls, no visible altar carved of stone or adorned with roses. And yet, when she enters the room, the ritual begins. The emotionally mature man does not always understand it, at least, not with the thinking mind. He only knows that something changes when she is near. Time bends, breath slows, the energy shifts, not louder, but deeper. There is no need for her to speak, no need to perform, no need to impress, because her presence does the speaking. Her presence is the final form of power. It is not the result of looks, charm, or cleverness. It is the sacred consequence of self-integration. A woman who has owned her voice, mastered her stillness, embraced her wholeness, and kissed the mouth of her shadow. She carries an aura that cannot be learned, only earned. Carl Jung hinted at this when he wrote of the numinous quality that emerges when the anima is fully embodied. It is not what she does, it is what she is. A living symbol, a myth made flesh, a walking memory of something ancient and holy. This kind of woman does not try. She does not explain herself. She does not strive to be chosen. She chooses herself moment after moment. And that choice ripples into every breath she takes, every glance, every silence. Her body becomes a field, a remembering field. To the emotionally mature man, this is not a woman to be conquered. She is a frequency to be met, a mirror to be respected, a threshold to be crossed only with consent from the soul. You see, presence is the most erotic language on earth, and the woman who knows how to inhabit her own space without shrinking, without filling the silence, without grasping for attention, speaks it fluently, not through words, but through being. She can be reading a book, walking alone through a market, sitting still under a tree, and yet there's something about her, a gravitational pull that does not demand, but invites, not with flirtation, not with image, but with a kind of vibrational memory that whispers, I am not here to be seen, I am here to see. And men feel it, especially the ones who have grown tired of chasing noise. Presence is sacred, not because it's quiet, but because it's intentional, because it arises from deep within the bones, not out of effort, but out of alignment. It says, I am here, fully, without needing to be more or less, without adjusting myself to make you stay. I have become enough for myself. And from this place, I welcome only what is real. The emotionally mature man does not crave a woman who fills space. He craves a woman who inhabits it. And when he meets her, he knows. There is no going back, because once you've sat beside someone whose presence feels like a sacred text, every shallow conversation becomes unbearable. Every performance, every manipulation, every game feels like betrayal, because now you know what's possible. Now you know how love can feel when it's not filtered through fear. Her presence is a ritual. It realigns, it cleanses, it demands truth. And not everyone is ready for that. Most are not. Because to stand in the presence of a woman who does not need you is to confront your own incompleteness, to face all the ways you've tried to find worth through control, validation, or escape. And for the man who is not ready, this will feel like a kind of death. But to the man who is ready, her presence is not a death, it is a rebirth. He steps into it not to dominate, but to remember. He does not try to have her. He tries to meet her, to rise into himself enough that he becomes worthy of standing in that field without collapsing. And he knows this will require everything of him, but still he steps forward, because her presence does not promise comfort. It promises awakening. And for the mature masculine, nothing is more magnetic than a woman who knows her presence is enough, who does not decorate herself with desperation or distract herself with performance, who simply allows her being to speak louder than her actions. This is the final secret. the one they don't teach you in any book or seduction manual. That the most irresistible women are not always the loudest, the most agreeable, or the most visibly powerful. They are the ones who have made peace with who they are when no one is watching. They are the ones who walk as though the earth itself rises to meet each of their steps. Because it does, presence is what's left when the masks fall away, when the game is over, when you are no longer trying to become someone, but simply allowing who you've always been to arrive. And when you arrive like that, the right man cannot help but follow, not because he is enchanted, but because he is finally free. So now, woman of soul and fire, woman of grief and gravity, let me speak directly to you. You do not need to perform to be worthy. You do not need to diminish yourself to be loved. Your softness is not weakness. Your rage is not wrong. Your hunger is not shameful. Your silence is not empty. Your presence is not too much. You are not too much. You are exactly what the world has forgotten it needs. And the men who are emotionally evolved enough to feel that truth, they will not ask you to shrink. They will not ask you to prove. They will not ask you to become anything other than who you are when you finally stop asking for permission to exist. Because that is the woman they've been waiting for. Not the fantasy, but the frequency. The embodied truth, the sacred mystery. The soul who lives not to please, but to remember. And so now we end where we began. You were never meant to chase. You were meant to call. And when you do, from your voice, from your stillness, from your wholeness, from your shadow, from your presence, you don't attract love. You summon it, and only the ones who are ready will answer. Thank you for walking this path with me. Thank you for remembering yourself. The world doesn't need more women pretending to be lovable. It needs more women returning to their original, untamed frequency. If you're ready to walk this path with me, stay, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see yourself. Until next time.